Hello and welcome. My name is William A. Brown, or Bill, and I am the CTO for Application Services in GBS Cloud COC. Today I'm going to take you through a demo of Bluemix. As you know, Bluemix is IBM's open standard, cloud-based platform-as-a-service tool for rapidly developing, building, managing, and running applications of all types: web, mobile, big data, new smart devices. This platform-as-a-service offering enables a developer to write once and run anywhere on the cloud. Today we're going to build a Java web application using Bluemix and Eclipse. Our objective is to show you how Bluemix simplifies the development, provisioning, and orchestration of an application for deployment in the cloud. As an add-on to this webcast, we will provide a PDF document with all the tasks needed to complete the exercise on your own, and of course the code for the application. The Java web application we will build is a simple members list. We will add function to create, read, update, and delete member items from the list. In building this Java web application in Bluemix, we will create a development space, select a runtime, select services, deploy the application, run the application. The application code needed to complete this exercise has already been developed and debugged. We've done this to speed the task completion of this exercise and to highlight Bluemix, not Java application development. For this simple Java web application, we will use IBM WebSphere Liberty Profile as the application server and a simple NoSQL database using JSON-DB. There are some prerequisites for this exercise, and here's what you'll need: some basic familiarity with Java and JEE web application development, a working knowledge of the Eclipse IDE, and basic level of understanding for NoSQL databases. Of course, you'll have to sign up and obtain a user developer account for Bluemix. Please visit the link that we'll provide in the PDF so that you can sign up and get the user ID. You'll also need to install the Cloud Foundry command line interface. This tool should be installed on your machine or on your laptop. The latest release of Bluemix has been updated to be used with the Cloud Foundry version 6. And we'll provide you with a link to download this tool as well, and another link that will give you some detailed instructions on how to set it up and install it. And then you'll also need Eclipse, the Java EE IDE. The suggested version for this exercise is the Kepler version for web developers. It should be installed in your environment. You can download it from the link that we provide you. You can identify the version that you need by selecting Eclipse IDE for Java EE developers from the list of options that they provide you at the link that we'll provide you. And then lastly, you need to set up Eclipse with the necessary plugins for Cloud Foundry, for Rational Team Concert, for JazzHub, and eGit. And of course, we'll provide you with a link to get that done as well. So let's get started on building our application and setting up our Bluemix environment so that we can complete this demo. Okay, the first thing we need to do is to log into Bluemix. As you can see, we've gone to the Bluemix at the following link that I've highlighted up here. I'm going to click on the login button at the top corner of the web page. That will take me to the login screen. And since I've logged in already, Bluemix just automatically logged me in with my Bluemix user ID and password. For me, that Bluemix user ID and password is my IBM user ID and password that I use for W3. As you see, we're logged in. Next thing that I'm going to do is to create a new space for our application. So I'm going to click on this area on the left-hand part of the screen that says Space. We'll click the arrow. I'm going to click on Manage Spaces. That provides me with the dialog that you see here. And I'm going to create a new space. I'm going to create a new space in a sandbox that I've put together before called Bill's Bluemix Sandbox. So I'm going to click on Create a New Space. That opens up the following dialog. And here I'm going to put in the name of the space, which we're going to name this space Demo. I'll click on Create. and the space is created for me. So the next thing I want to do is verify that the space has been created. I verify that by seeing it on the screen and also seeing the space added as another space in my development sandbox or in my organizational area. I also want to make sure that my user name has the appropriate access profile. It's logged me on automatically as a manager, as a developer, and as an auditor. So the next thing I'm going to want to do is refresh my screen and then go on to step 2. So I can refresh the screen by pressing this green circle button or this refresh button on the screen. I can also refresh the screen by pressing Control and R. But let's try it here first. And as you see, that refreshes the screen. Last refresh, 0 seconds. But right now, I'm going to go back to the dashboard. I'll click on my sandbox. And then from here, I'm going to click on Dashboard. And you see that my dashboard shows that I have 1 or 2 other applications that I've built, but we're going to build this new one today. It also shows that my demo space has been created, and now I'm ready to start to provision new services for my new application. So the next thing I'm going to do is, again, select my organizational space, which I have. I'm going to select a demo in that organizational space, which brings me to this dialog. And as you can see, there's no applications and no services that have been created in this demo development space right now. So the next thing I'm going to do is scroll down to add a service. So here we are with services, and I'm going to add one. And I'll do that by clicking on Add a Service. That brings me to the following dialog. And as you can see, I can add a number of different things from this dialog. I can add boilerplates for mobile backend starter or for Java and DB development, a web starter. I can add runtimes for Liberty, Node.js, Ruby on Rails, and Ruby Sinatra. I can also add a list of services. What we're going to do today for our demo is just add the JSON DB service. So as you see, I scroll down to the services, and now I'm highlighting JSON DB. I'm going to click on JSON DB, and it brings me to this dialog asking me to add JSON DB, the JSON DB service, to an application. I'm going to click on Add to Application, and that brings me to another dialog. This dialog will add the JSON DB service to my demo space that I created, and it could potentially add it to an application that's already been created. But since we're going to create the application in Eclipse, for this particular exercise, we're not going to associate the JSON DB service to an application. So I'm going to click on Do Not Associate, and then I'm going to rename the JSON DB service that I'm adding to this demo. I'm going to rename it to JSON DB Demo. I'll click Create, and as you can see, I'll verify that the JSON DB service has been added to my development space by looking at my development space in the dashboard and seeing that the JSON DB service is here. Now that we've added the JSON DB service to our demo space, now let's move on to setting up our Eclipse IDE environment to work with Bluemix. So the first thing we're going to do is, of course, start our Eclipse IDE. I just happen to have mine started, so I'll bring that up on the screen. And now what we're going to do is to create a new project. And what we're going to do is create a dynamic web project. We do that by clicking on, well, there's 2 ways to do that. We can click on this drop down here and select Dynamic Web Project, or we can select File, New, and Dynamic Web Project. So when I do that, it pops open the dialog that you see on your screen. So I'm going to give this project a name. As we've said before, we want to make that name unique, so you should put your initials in the beginning of the name of the project, followed by Bluemix demo. And here I'll show you what I'm talking about. So I'll put in my initials, W-A-B, and since I've done this more than once, I'm going to put in a number for versioning, and then I'll put in Bluemix demo. Actually, you can name this whatever you like. You just have to remember what you've named it so you can work with it as we go along. Next, what we need to do is to make sure that we select the appropriate runtime and the default configuration for Cloud Foundry. So first I'm going to click on selecting the runtime, and it's in here already, but just going to verify so that we go through the steps. So I'll select Cloud Foundry runtime, then I select Next. It asks me for my Cloud Foundry or my Bluemix user ID and password, or my email and password. This happens to be my IBM credentials, and I'll put that in now. Of course, my super secret password. Then I want to manage the cloud. And so in this next step, I want to be able to select the appropriate URL or the appropriate link to the Bluemix space so that I can push my code to the appropriate place. And since I've already have these in here, I'm going to select the one that I want to associate, and I'm going to edit. And basically, I'm just going to check to make sure that they're done correctly, and they are, and I'll click Finish. And of course, it does a ping to make sure that those links are active. If you had nothing in this dialog, if nothing was entered here, then you would select Add, and you would add in the URL for the Bluemix demo space, which is here. We also supply that to you in the PDF that comes along with this demo. Now that's done and it's in place. I'll click OK to close this window, and then takes me back to the window that we've seen before. And what I need to do here is to validate the account. What that means is when I click on Validate the Account, the Eclipse IDE will follow the route or the path in the URL of the link that we provided for Bluemix to make sure that, one, it's valid, and B, we have the appropriate login credentials to log in. So let me click on Validate. As you see, it's connecting, getting the organization and spaces, and of course, it returns a positive that the account information is valid. So next, I'm going to click on Next so that we can associate what we've done to my development space, or to the development space that we've put together. So I'll click on Next. My sandbox comes up from Bluemix, and just so that you can see the correlation, let me go back to my Bluemix space. So here's my Bluemix development space, and of course, that Bluemix development space is within my Bill's Bluemix Sandbox development organization. And so that's just what you see here as well. So I'm going to select the development space that we've created and that we want to deploy this application in. So I'll select Demo, and then I'll click Finish. It finishes with no errors. As you see, it has presented no errors back to the screen, and so at the bottom here I can click Finish, and we've created a Bluemix server and we have connected our IDE to our Bluemix development space. So we just finished making the necessary connections between the Eclipse IDE and Bluemix. We validated that we had a correct path and URL link so that we could push our code to Bluemix from the Eclipse IDE. Now we're going to get into developing the application. The first thing we want to do is to be able to extract the archive that you'll find in the document we send along with this presentation in Appendix A. We want to extract that to a folder named Code for Demo. As we said before, we've pre-developed and debugged the code so that we can spend our time working in Bluemix and not writing Java code. I've already debugged that, but let me show you what I've done there. So I'm using a Mac, so I'll go to my Finder. If you're using a Windows-based machine, then of course you'll go to Windows Explorer. And I've extracted that zip file folder in the following location. I've extracted it to here, to code for demo, and then here are the files that were extracted from this zip file. So the next step that I need to do is to select Java resources. So I go to the Bluemix project that we've put together. I highlight Java resources. That will create a bit of a drop-down with a couple of directories underneath it. From that drop-down, we want to be able to right-click, select New, create a new class, which opens up this dialog. And in this class, we're going to create a new class. We'll call that new class Bluemix Demo, and of course, I've asked you to put your initials in front of Bluemix Demo since we need to be concerned about uniqueness for your demo. And I've done this a number of times. I've made mine WAB1. So I add that there. The next thing I need to do is to make sure that I put in the name of the servlet that I'm going to create. And so again, the name of the servlet I'll create will be WAB1 Bluemix Demo Servlet. And then I need to select the appropriate superclass. I do that by clicking on Browse next to superclass. As you see, what's in there now is java.language.object, but we want something different, so I'll click on Browse. And what I'll need to do is search for the appropriate superclass. So in the search window up top, I'm going to type in HTTP servlet, and that brings up the superclass that I want, which is the HTTP servlet superclass, or Java ax.servlet.http. I'll select that, say OK. It populates here, and then once I'm done, I will click the OK button to return back to my previous screen. Now, I'm not going to click OK because I've done this in the past. And so if I do it again, then I'll have some duplication. So now that brings me back to my Eclipse IDE. And so here, I'm going to need to make sure that I add a couple of folders, necessary folders, and a file to the rest of my project. So I'm going to right-click on my newly created project, which is this one here. I'll right-click on that. I'm going to select New. I'll select File. And the file that I want to create, I will create under the following folder structure. So I went under the name of my project, I went to Web Content, and then I'm going to create this new file under web-inf. And the file that I'm going to create will be named web.xml. Once I add that in, I'll click Finish. It creates the file and opens it for me. And now I need to copy in the XML script that we've provided to you in the description of the demo. So let me go to that script. I'm going to copy all of that in from the Word doc that we've sent you or the PDF we've sent you. And then I'm going to go back to my Eclipse IDE, and in the file we created called web.xml, I'm going to paste that in. Once pasted in, as you see here it's pasted, I'm going to again go to the project folder that I've created. So now I've pasted the XML into the web.xml file, and as you can see there's an asterisk next to web.xml. That means the file has not been saved, so let me save it now before I move on to the next step. I'll click File and Save. The asterisk goes away, and now the file is saved. So the next step is for me to create a folder that I'll need in later development. And I do that, again, by going to the project that I've created. I'll right-click on that project name, select New, and this time instead of File, I'm going to select Folder. I want to create a folder, again, under Web Content and under Web-INF called, and the folder name that I'm going to create is going to be called LIB, or lib. Now I've created this already, so you'll see it here in the directory structure. But if I hadn't created it, I would enter in the name of the folder here, LIB, I'd click Finish, and then the folder would be created. The next thing I need to do is to be able to import the code that we've extracted from the zip file that we mentioned before. I'll need to extract that code and bring in some drivers into our project, and we'll do that in the following way. So the first thing I'm going to do is go to the folder that I've just created under Web Content, under Web.inf, which is lib, and here in that folder I'm going to right-click, select Import, and that will bring me to the following file system, which I'll highlight and double-click on. And now I'll navigate to the directory that I extracted the code to. I'll do that by clicking on Browse, and since I've done this already, that library is already selected. But I would navigate to the library, select the library where I'm looking to find the Mongo-Java driver, select that library, select Open, and that will populate the dialog with the appropriate driver that I need to select. Then I'll check it to make sure that I've selected it for import. As you see, I'm going to import that driver into the folder that we've described above for my demo space. When I'm finished, I'm going to click Finish, but since I've done this already, I'm just going to click Cancel. Once done, that driver will be imported into this folder, as you can see here. Now the next thing we want to do is to be able to configure and modify our demo and a link to our demo to Bluemix so that we can start to push code. So the first thing I'm going to do is go to the Servers tab in my Eclipse IDE, that's down here. I'm going to select Pivotal Cloud Foundry, and now I need to configure my Bluemix demo application and push it to my Bluemix development space in Bluemix. And I do that in the following way. I select Servers from my Eclipse palette, and under Servers you'll see a list of servers that I've set up. I'm going to take the last one, which is Pivotal Cloud Foundry, and if you remember, Bill's Bluemix Sandbox is the organization and demo is the space that we put together on Bluemix. I highlight that, I right-click it, click on Add and Remove, and now I want to add my project. So I highlight my project, I click on Add, and once it's been added, I click Finish. Then I verify the name of my project is correct, which it is, and then from here I click Next. As you see, that populated the domain for Bluemix, the deployed URL for Bluemix, and a memory limit. I'm going to verify just by looking, verify that my name is correct again. So Bluemix Demo, and then from here I'll click Next. And this brings me to the dialog that tells me the services that are available in the space, and I want to add this service to the application that I'm pushing to Bluemix. So I do that by clicking the check mark, which selects the service that I want to add, and now I'll click Finish. As you can see, now the application is deploying, it's generating the application archive, it's pushing the application to the Cloud Foundry or the Bluemix server. and we'll wait a couple of minutes for it, or a couple of seconds hopefully, for it to finish. So you see it's staging the application and starting the application now on Bluemix, and then shortly it will push and show me that it's finished. So as you see, it started the application, downloaded the app packages, and pushed the application to the Bluemix server. Now from here I need to go back to the Servers tab. Now that I've pushed the code to the Bluemix server and I've associated the service that's in the space to my application, now I need to move to the next step. So I will highlight the Pivotal Cloud Foundry entry. I'm going to click on the arrow next to it, and that will show the application that I've just uploaded to Bluemix. I'll click on that, right-click it, and I'd start it. It's already started because I had auto start set in my configuration. So the application has already been started and synchronized. Now let's see what's going on in the Bluemix environment. So if all has worked well, I would have pushed my application to my Bluemix demo space in my sandbox. And let's see if that's in fact what's happened. So I'm going to go back to Bluemix. I'll log in. It asks for my login credentials, which are here, and I'll click Sign In. So now I'm signed into Bluemix. I'm in my Bluemix sandbox, or Bill's Bluemix sandbox, that I see here in the top right-hand corner. Over on the left-hand side, I see that I'm in the demo space, and I see that my application, WAB1 Bluemix Demo, has been uploaded and it's running. As you see here, your app is running great. I've got a green mark next to it, meaning all systems are go, and my application health shows green as well. Now this is just the skeleton code, so really there's been no functionality added, and so nothing will work. We still need to complete a couple of additional tasks to make that happen. But before we complete the coding and deploy, what we'll need to do is make sure that we have set the appropriate variables within Bluemix. So what we're going to do is make sure that we have the appropriate service endpoints identified and configured for this application so it will run correctly. One of these variables are a variable called the VCAP services. We need to make sure that they're available to the application and associated with the services that we've selected. So in order to do that, I need to double-click on the application icon in my Bluemix dashboard. So I'll double-click on my application. That opens up this dialog. It shows that the application is running, as we saw before. There's one instance of it running, and that there is one service associated to this particular application. So I can see the application details here. The next thing I want to do is select Runtime from the menu on the left-hand side, and that will bring up my Runtime dialog. I want to scroll down to see the VCAP services. And so here they are, and they're described as follows. So the services that you saw have been associated with this application are displayed here. As the JSON-DB demo, is the name, label, and the rest you can read. So now that I've verified that the VCAP services are here, I'm going to go back to Eclipse and make some additional configurations. So under com.ibm.bluemix.demo.util, which is part of my Java resources for my application, I'm going to select the servlet that we created before. I will select it, double-click on it to open it up in the pane, which is now open. And now I'm going to need to add code to this servlet. And as I said before, we've created this code, and it is in the folder that we extracted from the zip file that comes along with our PDF. So I'm going to go back to my Finder window, or if you're using Windows, go to Windows Explorer. I'm going to the folder where I extracted the files, and I'm going to find my servlet. The servlet's going to be called Bluemix Demo Servlet.java. Double-click on that to open it up. I'm just going to open it in a text editor, because what I'm going to do is copy the code that's in here and paste it into the servlet we've created in Eclipse. So I'm copying the code. So back in my Eclipse environment, I'm going to go to the Java servlet file we opened, and I'm going to replace the skeleton code that's in here with code that I've just copied. As you see, I've replaced that. And now I need to do just a bit of housekeeping. I'm going to do a global search and replace to make sure that the name of my servlet is correct throughout the code that I've just pasted. So I'll search for Bluemix Demo Servlet, and I'm going to replace it with the appropriate name. For you, it will be your initials, Bluemix Demo Servlet, and as you see, that's what I've put in as well. So I'm going to replace the next one, find the next one, replace and find the next one, and replace and find the next one. And I think we're done. Now I have a couple of errors here which I'm going to remove now. I can see I have errors because I had an error mark there. Here I have another. And the rest of the code looks clean, except for one error mark here under operation. Let me stop and fix this. So we've checked all of the errors and made sure that the name in our servlet is correct in all the spaces or all the places that it's been referenced. And we've made sure that it matches the name of our servlet and the name of our application. Since that's correct, we'll move on to the next step, which is now to import the JSP into our project. And so we do this by going to the web content folder, this folder here, right-clicking on it, clicking on Import. That will open up this dialog. We want to choose File System from this dialog. Double-click on File System. And then we want to navigate to the directory where we extracted the zip file. So I'll browse, and by magic, I'm already at that directory. So I'm going to select that directory, click Open, and it populates my screen with the directory and the files in that directory. I'm going to put a check next to the directory that we want to import from, and for this particular step, I only want to import the member info JSP. So I'm going to uncheck the Bluemix Demo Servlet, since we've imported that already and we've copied the code in and have that code already in the servlet we've created in a previous step. So I'm only going to check member info JSP, make sure it's going to be installed in the correct folder. So in the Bluemix Demo/web content, that's here. And then I'm going to click Finish. Now I might get a couple of warnings because I've done this before. And in fact, here's the first one. I'm going to say yes, overwrite that, since I haven't made changes to this and I'm importing it new. I'll say yes, and it completes the import. The next thing I want to do is now, I want to build the project. And this will also uncover any errors that might pop up and save my project. So in order to do that, I'm going to click on Project and Build Project. So I've built the project, and no dialog popped up, no errors were shown, and I would have seen an error if an X displayed over here. All I see are warning signs, so I must have built appropriately. So the next thing I want to do is go to the Servers tab, which is here. Go to my Pivotal Cloud Foundry build, which is here. Right-click on it, and then click on Publish. This will stage and deploy the modified application into Bluemix. So we're going to again push the application and the new components that we've added to Bluemix. We'll click on Publish, and it starts to publish. So again, you see it's deploying the application, generating application archive, pushing the application to Cloud Foundry or to Bluemix, staging the application, starting it on the Bluemix side, should be started already, and you'll start to see it publish the application in some sort of status. Now I want to check my work, right? So I want to go into Bluemix again. I want to log back to Bluemix. I want to make sure that my application is running correctly, or in other words, I want to make sure that I have a green status. And so I do. There's a green next to my application and green next to the runtime. And that should mean that it's running correctly. But I'm going to refresh things just to make sure. So I'll click back on the dashboard, and I see again my application is running correctly. It has a green status here. My application health is fine. I'm going to double click on the application itself, and again we see the same information. So back on my dashboard, we see that my application is running and the application health is fine. But for my particular demo, I already have a route installed, but I just want to make sure that that route is correct. So I'm going to double click on the application. That'll bring me to the application detail. And I see it's still green, it's still running fine, and I have a route displayed here, but I just want to make sure it's right and go through the process of how you would edit it or change it. So this wheel here on the right-hand side, if I click on it, it shows me a number of menu options. And so I'm going to edit the route for this application, just so that we can look at the dialog. Click on Edit, and then I would enter in the appropriate name for the demo. So, of course, this matches what we had in the past, but again, if there was any discrepancy between this name and that name, then you would make the change here. You would make the correction here. I'd save that if I made changes to it, or I could add another route if I needed to. But since I have it already, I'm going to click Cancel. And so my route is fine. So now that we know the route is correct, all we need to do now is test the application. And we can do that by clicking on the URL, or this link right here. I'll double click that, and our application displays. And it asks us to, well, let's enter a couple of members. So the first member I'm going to enter is somebody I know fairly well. His address is, and we'll create, and he displays down here. Let's add one more, mostly because I'm so happy things are working. Somebody else I know fairly well. Okay, and as you see, things are working quite nicely. So let's say we wanted to remove somebody from our list. We highlight them here. See, they display here, and click Delete. They're gone from our list. So as you can see, our application that we've created, orchestrated, provisioned, and deployed using Bluemix and Eclipse is finished and working quite well, and that will conclude our demo. So thank you very much. Again, you'll get the complete instructions on how to create this demo on your own, along with the code needed and instructions and links for any of the tools that we've used today. So thank you very much, and that will conclude our demo.